Andrew Tate's rise to global infamy is a story that mirrors the modern internet age, a tale of algorithms, influence, and excess. Once a professional kickboxer with a modest following, Tate transformed himself into a digital icon of hyper-masculinity, projecting an image of wealth, dominance, and unfiltered confidence. Known to his followers as Top G, he built an empire around a persona that championed self-reliance, financial success, and control, particularly over women, while openly rejecting what he called the weakness of modern society. His brashness drew both admiration and outrage, carving him a place in the cultural spotlight as the so-called king of toxic masculinity. Through a calculated use of social media, Tate cultivated a loyal fan base, mostly composed of young men drawn to his unapologetic bravado and promises of power in a world they felt was increasingly stacked against them. His videos, often shared across TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram, were short, sharp bursts of provocation, declarations about gender roles, money, and personal worth that spread like wildfire through online echo chambers. But behind the supercars, cigar smoke, and motivational mantras lay a darker story that would eventually come to define his name. As his influence grew, so did the controversies. Critics accused him of promoting misogyny, manipulation, and a dangerous ideology that blurred the line between empowerment and exploitation. What began as a brand of self-help for disillusioned young men evolved into something far more sinister, a web of accusations that would unravel his empire. By 2022, the man who once preached control and conquest found himself in the grip of international law enforcement, facing charges of human trafficking, rape, and organized crime. Andrew Tate's rise and fall is more than a personal downfall. It's a reflection of how modern fame can both elevate and consume. In the age of virality, the line between influencer and instigator, success and scandal, can vanish overnight. And for Tate, it did. Emory Andrew Tate III was born on December 1, 1986, in Washington, D.C., into a family that blended intellect and competition. His father, Emory Tate Jr., was a renowned chess international master, celebrated for his strategic brilliance, while his mother worked to provide stability for the family. This mix of intellect and intensity seemed to shape Andrew's worldview from an early age. After his parents' separation, Tate moved with his mother and siblings to Luton, England, a shift that would influence both his character and his sense of identity. Holding dual British and American citizenship, he often described himself as embodying the best of both worlds, the grit of the UK's working class and the confidence of American ambition. It was in England that Tate's fascination with combat sports began to take shape. Drawn to the discipline, control, and adrenaline of fighting, he immersed himself in kickboxing, a pursuit that soon became more than a hobby. By his 20s, Tate had turned professional, competing in and eventually winning multiple world titles under organizations like ISCA and Infusion. His success in the ring wasn't just athletic, it was performative. He learned how to command attention, exude dominance, and project strength, qualities that would later become central to his online persona. The discipline of combat sports offered Tate a tangible sense of mastery, something he would later sell to millions of followers in the form of mental toughness and self-discipline. His achievements as a fighter gave him credibility in the alpha male world he would go on to cultivate. Proof, in his eyes and those of his fans, that his philosophies of power and control were not just talk, but lived experience. What began in the ring as a test of physical skill would eventually evolve into the foundation of his empire, the ideology of the fighter as a model for life itself. When Andrew Tate retired from professional kickboxing, he didn't fade quietly from the spotlight, he simply shifted arenas. Trading the ring for the digital stage, he began to craft a new identity rooted in the visual language of power. Luxury cars, private jets, tailored suits, and grand mansions became the backdrop of his reinvention. He styled himself as a man who had not only mastered combat, but also conquered the modern world, positioning his life as the blueprint for success. His online persona radiated wealth, discipline, and dominance, a carefully curated performance designed to attract young men seeking purpose in a culture he claimed had softened them. Through social media, Tate's message spread like wildfire. He wasn't just another influencer flaunting riches. He marketed himself as a philosopher of masculinity, a mentor for those disillusioned with what he called the feminization of modern society. To monetize his ideology, he launched several ventures that blended motivation, marketing, and mentorship. Hustlers University promised financial independence through online business tactics, while The Real World and The War Room presented themselves as elite brotherhoods for ambitious men, spaces where followers could learn the truth about success, women, and power. These platforms, operating under a veneer of self-improvement, also became key mechanisms for amplifying his influence. Tate's rhetoric resonated deeply within the manosphere, an online ecosystem of forums and influencers promoting traditional masculinity and, often, hostility toward feminism. His tone, confident, confrontational, and dismissive of social norms, appealed to those who felt alienated by changing gender dynamics. Yet, the same qualities that built his fame also fueled controversy. His comments about women were explicitly misogynistic. He once stated that women belonged in the home, that men should exert control in relationships, and that dating younger women made it easier for men to make an imprint. These declarations were not slips of the tongue, but strategic provocations, crafted to spark outrage and attention. By 2022, Andrew Tate had become one of the most recognizable and divisive figures on the internet. His videos flooded social media platforms, each one designed for maximum virality. Short, sharp, and algorithm-friendly clips featuring his signature mix of arrogance, confidence, and provocation. His sound bites, often about dominance, discipline, and control, were repackaged by fans and circulated endlessly on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. Even when he was banned from major platforms for promoting hate speech and misogyny, his presence only seemed to grow stronger. His followers, operating almost like a decentralized marketing army, re-uploaded his content across countless accounts, ensuring that his voice could never truly be silenced. The bans themselves became a badge of honor, reinforcing his self-styled image as a truth-teller, censored by a weak and politically correct establishment. The reach of his influence extended far beyond the internet. Teachers around the world began reporting a troubling trend. Young boys quoting Tate in classrooms, mimicking his language, and adopting his worldview as fact. His phrases about women's roles, men's superiority, and the importance of control started to shape real attitudes and interactions. What had started as online entertainment evolved into a social phenomenon, one that educators and parents struggled to contain. To many, it was evidence of a larger cultural crisis, a reflection of how deeply social media personalities could shape belief systems in the absence of traditional role models. Financially, Tate's empire was thriving. His online ventures from Hustlers University to the War Room reportedly generated millions of dollars in revenue each month, largely through subscription-based mentorship programs that promised to teach men how to achieve his version of success. Behind the glossy imagery and proud is a fine-tuned marketing machine. Every boast, every soundbite, every flash of a Bugatti served as both advertisement and recruitment tool. Yet, the more his influence expanded, the sharper the divide became. To his supporters, Tate was the embodiment of unapologetic masculinity, a man who spoke uncomfortable truths in a world too afraid to hear them. To his critics, he was something far darker, a dangerous figure glamorizing misogyny, exploitation, and emotional manipulation under the guise of empowerment. The tension between those two perspectives defined the peak of his power and foreshadowed the steep fall that was about to come. By mid-2022, the tide began to turn against Andrew Tate. His inflammatory remarks about women, assertions that they were property, that sexual assault victims bore responsibility for their attacks, and that men should dominate every aspect of relationships, triggered widespread outrage. The backlash was swift and global. Major social media platforms including YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram permanently banned his accounts, citing violations of policies against hate speech and harmful content. For most influencers, such an expulsion would mark the end of their reach. But for Tate, it paradoxically became another form of publicity. Rather than disappearing, his digital presence multiplied. Fans and affiliates flooded the internet with reposted clips, ensuring his message continued to circulate even after his official profiles were taken down. In what became known as a digital Hydra effect, the more platforms tried to suppress him, the more omnipresent he seemed to become. Alternative and fringe platforms, spaces that positioned themselves as havens for free speech, welcomed him with open arms. In these echo chambers, his rhetoric not only survived, but thrived, feeding off a growing narrative that he was being persecuted for telling the truth.